In my previous life, I fell into the river trying to save my younger half-sister and was rescued by a street vendor. My family forced me to marry the vendor or face death. Even my half-sister looked at me with utter contempt, warning me not to tarnish the Marquisite's reputation. Later, I entered a convent as a nun. Yet my half-sister took my betrothal and married into the Prince of the North's household. On the day I was strangled, I finally learned she and the Prince of the North's heir had been secretly involved all along. The river incident had been their scheme from the start. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day I fell into the river. My half-sister was already halfway over the boat's railing. Panic etched across her face. "Sister, save me!" Just as I had in my past life. I rushed forward, but instead of reaching out to pull her, I slipped and shoved her overboard. "This time, I'll see if you marry or not. Sister, save me!" A startled cry snapped me back to reality. In disbelief, I stared ahead. Lin Wan was leaning against the boat's railing, half her body already flipped over, about to fall into the water. This scene felt so familiar. I instantly realized I had reincarnated, back to the very day I drowned. In my previous life, upon hearing Lin Wan's cry, I had instinctively rushed forward to pull her up. But she used my momentum to push me instead, and I fell into the water myself. After that, I drifted in the water, bobbing up and down, yet no one came to save me, not even the guards. Only when I felt myself on the verge of drowning did someone wrap their arms around my neck and drag me to shore. And the one who saved me wasn't any of the noble young masters attending the banquet, but a short, ugly peddler with a stall on the shore. Before all the witnesses, everyone declared I had lost my virtue. Enraged, father, persuaded by Lin Wan's aunt, forced me to marry this peddler to preserve the Marquis's reputation. I refused even at the cost of my life, ultimately becoming a nun. I intended to spend the rest of my days with only the lamp and Buddha. Yet Lin Wan still wouldn't leave me alone. "Sister!" Lin Wan's panicked voice rang out again. I glanced around. Besides Lin Wan and me, the deck now held Zhou Ting, the crown prince of the northern frontier. He stood beside me. Moments ago, he'd been whispering softly to me, but now he called out urgently, "Ran." His gaze signaled for me to hurry and save someone. It dawned on me, today was the banquet hosted by second Prince Chinyu. Male and female guests were supposed to be on separate decks of the pleasure boat. Lin Wan had claimed Zhou Ting and I hadn't seen each other in ages, and that he'd asked her to invite me up to the deck to ease his longing. She assured me she'd provide perfect cover for our meeting. Thinking of this, I lowered my head and let out a cold laugh. "You want me to save someone? Huh? Fine. I absolutely must go save them." I feigned extreme urgency and lunged toward Lin Wan. A flicker of triumphant scheming passed through her eyes. But the next second, my foot suddenly slipped. I thrust my hand out forcefully. A loud splash echoed. Lin Wan, who had been precariously yet steadfastly balanced moments before, now sent a huge spray of water into the air. A furious shout rang out beside me, "Wan." Gripping the railing, I turned back coldly, meeting Zhou Ting's gaze filled with shock and rage. "Your Highness, what did you call my younger sister?" A flicker of panic crossed Zhou Ting's face, but he quickly regained his gentle, affectionate demeanor. Ran. I was just speaking in haste. My words got the better of me." He gripped the railing as if preparing to dive in, but I grabbed his wrist. "Human life is at stake. Are you really going to make a scene over such a trivial matter? Ha! What a performance! But if you can put on a show, why can't I?" I clutched his wrist tightly and gestured around us. It was the Dragon Boat Festival, and the shore was crowded with people. Hearing the splash, all eyes turned toward us. "Your Highness, I'm doing this for Lin Wan's reputation. With everyone watching, if you engage in physical intimacy with her now, She'll have no choice but to become your concubine. Not only would father never permit a daughter of the Ho family to become a concubine, but the mere scandal of sisters serving the same man would be enough to drive her to death. Zhou Ting's grip on the railing suddenly loosened, his face blank with confusion. How? How did it come to this? It was supposed to be you. I gave him a cold stare. Oh. Should have been me what? Pierced by my gaze. He finally snapped back to reality, hastily averting his eyes and muttering, "Nothing." During our standoff, a figure moving through the water was already slowly approaching Lin Wan. By the time Zhou Ting reacted and looked over, Lin Wan had already wrapped her arms tightly around the man's neck. They clung to each other, pressed together without the slightest gap. When our group finally reached the shore, onlookers had already formed layers upon layers around Lin Wan and the street vendor, crowding the area so tightly not even a drop of water could pass through. After the guards finally cleared a path, the scene before them made the noble ladies cover their eyes in shock. Some of the more timid ones even gasped aloud. Lin Wan was soaking wet, her dress clinging to her body, tracing every curve. The vendor held her tightly against him. A leering smile spread across his face. In my previous life, I had already been unconscious by this point, completely unaware that this was the image I presented to others. No wonder everyone said I had lost my virtue. No wonder it took so long for anyone to rescue me after I fell into the water. They had timed it perfectly, ensuring I was unconscious and unable to struggle. Feigning utter shock, I cried out, "Sister! How could this be?" All eyes turned to me, grasping Chuanxue, the dazed maid of Lin Wan, with desperate urgency. I bellowed, "How have you been caring for the second young miss? Go summon the guards of the Chang'an Marquis' residence at once." The crowd erupted in a clamor. The Chang'an Marquis' residence? Could she be the daughter of an official? Is this the second young miss of the Chang'an Marquis' household? Those who hadn't known Lin Wan's identity now knew it all at once. No doubt. Within 2 hours, the entire capital would know that the second young miss of the Chang'an Marquis' residence had fallen into the water and been saved by a street vendor. Zhou Ting watched the surrounding crowd buzzing with discussion. Furious as he demanded of me, "How could you reveal Lin Wan's identity?" I shot him a cold glance. Lin Wan's identity was supposed to be a secret, yet he'd practically wanted to beat drums and gongs to announce mine. If I hadn't said anything, do you think this could have been kept hidden? I leaned close to Zhou Ting's ear and murmured softly, "Lin Wan will either marry the street vendor or die." "Or what? You think you can marry her?" At that moment, the street vendor began trembling violently. The second young miss? Not the eldest? His voice was faint, yet every noble present heard it clearly. Second Prince Chenyu, who had been concealed at the rear, now flashed a faint gleam in his dark eyes. His tongue flicked against his palate as a playful smile curved his lips. "So that's how it is? How amusing!" Zhou Ting's face darkened like a sooty pot bottom. He glared at the peddler as if he wanted to devour him whole. "You've committed a capital offense, yet you still spout nonsense? Do you wish to drag your family into this as well?" The peddler cautiously glanced at him, meeting that face, as terrifying as a demon's. His whole body trembled even more violently. I dare not. Your Highness. You are mistaken." I stepped forward, placing myself between him and the vendor. Zhou Ting's vicious glare instantly locked onto me, solid as steel. But I wasn't afraid. Instead, a mocking smile touched my lips. Though this vendor had tarnished my younger sister's honor, his intent was to save lives. Would the Marquis of Chang'an's household ever stoop to such bullying? I swept a glance over the gathered crowd and spoke calmly, "I swear before you all, my fellow villagers, that the Chang'an Marquis' household would never commit such an ungrateful act. Not only that, but we will welcome this hero as our honored guest." The peddler snapped his head up, his face frozen in disbelief. I cut him off immediately. "Hero, there is no need for fear. My father is the most upright and honorable man. Having observed you thoroughly, I see you possess a noble bearing, no less impressive than our heir apparent. Moreover, you carry a heart of kindness. My father most admires men like you. I believe he won't merely spare you blame, he'll marry my sister to you. Then we'll be family. No sooner had I spoken than the crowd erupted in commotion once more. Is this man destined to become the infeft Marquis's son-in-law? What incredible luck! With looks like his. What kind of dog shit did he step on to get this? I should have jumped first. Honestly. Is the eldest daughter of the Marquis of Cheng'en blind? Calling this short, ugly guy handsome? Saying he's almost as good-looking as the crown prince? This. The crowd's gaze began sweeping back and forth between the street vendor and Zhou Ting. Zhou Ting's face was no longer just as dark as a pot bottom, it had turned a deep, purplish black. Second Prince Chinyu pressed his folding fan to his lips but couldn't stifle a chuckle. One by one, the guests who'd shared the banquet on the boat joined in the laughter. The onlookers laughed even more unrestrainedly. Only I maintained a solemn expression, as if I genuinely believed it, unable to endure the humiliation any longer. Zhou Ting abandoned Lin Wan, still clutched in the vendor's arms, and stormed off. I stared coldly at his retreating figure until it vanished from view, then turned to the still flustered vendor with a smile. Hero, kindly accompany us. I then bowed to the surrounding crowd. To prove my words are true, I invite you all to witness this at the Cheng'en Marquis's residence. The crowd, already engrossed in the spectacle, readily agreed at my request. Since Lin Wan remained unconscious, the maids couldn't carry her, and having the guards do so would be improper. We must trouble the hero to escort my younger sister a little further. Just as he hesitated to refuse, I leaned close and whispered a threat. You've botched your mission. Countless people now seek your blood. If you value your life, seize this chance to cement your status as the second son-in-law of the Marquis of Cheng'en. With more eyes on you, you might survive. Otherwise. The street vendor's gaze hardened instantly. He scooped Lin Wan into his arms and began walking toward the Marquis of Cheng'en's residence. Sunlight washed over me, banishing the chill from my bones. This life, everything would be different after all. Just as I was about to take a step forward, a figure blocked my path. Chinyu lowered his head, a faint smile touching his lips. This game, miss, is yours to win. I met his gaze, expressionless. Is the second prince truly so short-sighted? He glanced at me, surprise flickering in his eyes. I pushed him aside, took 2 steps forward, then turned back with an invitation. The second prince might as well stay and see just how far I can go. A faint, ambiguous smile touched his lips. That's precisely my intention. By the time our large procession had circled half the capital and returned to the Marquis Cheng'en's residence, Father and Auntie Zhou had already received word and were waiting in the main hall. Madame Zhou's eyes rolled back at the sight of so many commoners still following me, as if she might faint. I hurried forward to interrupt. Madam, don't faint. Sister Wan hasn't woken up yet. At my gesture, the street vendor carried Lin Wan, still feigning unconsciousness, into the hall and laid her down. I knew her mindset. She feared that waking up to face so many people would leave no room for maneuver. If she kept pretending to be unconscious until the onlookers dispersed, Aunt Zhou would surely intercede for her. A few days of whispering in Father's ear would smooth things over. If you insist on playing this game, let's see how long you can keep it up. I approached Lin Wan and pretended to introduce the vendor to Father. Father, this is the hero who saved my sister. But my foot, shielded by my skirt, landed squarely on Lin Wan's hand. A faint muffled groan reached my ears. I looked down to see her jaw clenched tightly, struggling to endure the pain. I smiled, no longer paying her any mind, but pressed down harder with my foot, grinding it into the ground. The situation was extremely urgent. If not for this hero, Sister Wan would have been in grave danger. Father shot a grim glance at the short, ugly peddler, his lips trembling with anger. Seeing the situation turn sour, Aunt Jo hurried forward, waving her handkerchief. Thank you. Thank you so much. Attendants! Present this hero with 100 taels of gold as a token of gratitude from the Chingen Marquis' household. Upon hearing that only silver was offered, the crowd that had gathered to watch the commotion began to stir. I knew it! There's no way they'd actually marry the second young miss off to such a lowly street vendor. But just now, the eldest young miss was so certain. Look at second young miss now, this man's been carrying her around half the capital. If she doesn't marry him, what noble scions will still want her? So much for the Chingen Marquis' household being the epitome of integrity and propriety. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, and Father's face flushed crimson. He shot me a furious glare and whispered, "What the hell happened?" I feigned hurt. It happened during the Dragon Boat Festival. So many people witnessed it. Before I could intervene, the Crown Prince, desperate to save Sister Wan, threatened the vendor. I must insist our Marquis of Chingen household is not ungrateful, otherwise the censor would smash this matter right into your forehead tomorrow. Father abruptly raised his hand to shield his forehead. The Crown Prince is being foolish. I hastily lowered my head to hide the smile tugging at my lips, only to meet Lin Wan's venomous glare fixed on me. I immediately crouched down, swiftly propping open her eyelids as she tried to close them again. Seeing her furious yet silenced expression, I laughed. Sister Wan, you're finally awake. As I crouched, the pressure on her feet intensified. She cried out in pain, unable to feign unconsciousness any longer. Your betrothal is imminent. You mustn't faint again. After all, even if you truly were unconscious, this marriage is merely a matter of parental decree and matchmaker's words. Whether you're conscious or not makes little difference. Fury made her eyes roll back, nearly causing her to faint for real. I glanced at Father, signaling with my eyes toward the crowd peering curiously at the commotion. His brow was deeply furrowed, clearly anxious about how the censors would discuss this matter at tomorrow's court assembly. Your lordship, Aunt Jo, sensing something was amiss, was about to speak when I kicked the small vendor. He immediately shouted, Your lordship. Then he threw himself to the ground, trembling violently. Yet his voice remained steady. I begged to marry the second young miss. Everyone froze in shock at this sudden turn of events. Only Lin Wan sensed trouble. Zhang Fan. How dare you? I stroked my chin. Sister, you already know your future brother-in-law's name? It seems fate has already bound you two together. Lin Wan covered her mouth in panic. I snorted coldly, saying nothing more. Today, my purpose wasn't to expose Lin Wan's plot against me, but to make her personally experience the coercion, the humiliation, the utter darkness I endured in my past life. I glanced back at Zhang Fan indifferently. He snapped back to his senses and declared loudly, I only sought to save her, never expecting to tarnish the second young miss's reputation. Now the entire capital has witnessed our intimate embrace. If I back down now, the second young miss faces certain death. I know I'm unworthy of her, but I'll take full responsibility. I'll devote my life to her, to atone for my sins. I'd heard these words before in my past life. Only the second young miss had been replaced with the first young miss. They publicly cut off my escape route, marry or die. No one came to my aid, everyone pushed me toward the edge. Alone and helpless, I had nowhere to turn. In the end, only by holding up my mother's spirit tablet did I secure a retreat, becoming a nun, living by the light of an ancient lamp and the Buddha. Well then, Lin Wan, now you get to taste this flavor yourself. Suddenly, Aunt Jo lunged at me, raising her hand to slap me. I tilted my head to the side, avoiding her blow. Instead, I clapped my hands together with a sharp, resounding crack. Everyone stared at us in disbelief. convinced she'd actually struck me. You vile woman. How dare you frame your own sister like this? I looked up at her as though she were already dead. I'd thought Lin Wan was already finished. That she'd run out of tricks. The next step was to deal with her. But I hadn't even had to lift a finger, she'd walked right into my trap. If she wanted to divert attention and buy Lin Wan a sliver of mercy, I'd send her straight to hell first. I covered my face in disbelief. Auntie. How dare you hit me? How dare I hit you? I'd kill you if I could. Auntie gnashed her teeth. Her well-maintained face twisted into a hideous grimace. I glanced at my father, who still hadn't taken it seriously and stood there in a daze. Father, did you permit concubine Zhou to strike me like this? You're just a youngster. What's the big deal about getting hit a couple of times? No big deal? She's a concubine. And I'm the legitimate daughter born to the main wife. The 3 bonds and 5 constants, her daring to strike me is an act of rebellion. A lowly concubine, even if she manages the household affairs, is still nothing more than a servant. A servant dares to strike a proper master of the house. Do you know what punishment she deserves? Father, you hold the position of Vice Minister of Rights. Yet you cannot even manage the basic etiquette and ethics of your own small household. How could the emperor possibly entrust you with overseeing the entire nation's cultural education and ceremonial rites? Father roared in fury. Lin ran. How dare you speak such insolence? I laughed scornfully. Or perhaps, Father, you intend to elevate that lowly concubine? To make her the mistress of this Qing'an Marquis' household? Auntie Zhou stared at me in terror, as if gazing upon a demon risen from hell. How did you become this? I grinned. Of course she'd find it strange. The once most gentle eldest daughter of the Qing'an Marquis' household, who dared not even speak loudly, who only bowed her head in apology, had now transformed into this. She didn't know that after death, I was no longer the same person. I was a demon crawling out of hell. I raised my hand and lashed out at Aunt Zhou with a fierce slap. One blow wasn't enough. I struck again and again. Blow after blow. Father tried to rush forward to stop me, but my gaze froze him in place. He who makes his concubine his primary wife after his wife's death, if he does not answer, he must correct it. Did father no longer wish to hold office? At that moment, Qin Yu, who had been watching the spectacle from the back, slowly stepped forward, fanning himself. His lips curved in a smile. Yet his dark eyes flashed with contempt. As it happens, I am to attend the imperial banquet tonight. I shall personally request His Majesty's permission to resign on behalf of the Marquis of Qing'an. Father's eyes had already widened at the sight of the second prince. Hearing these words, he was so terrified he immediately knelt and crawled forward, throwing himself at Qin Yu's feet. No. Second prince. No. This old servant never harbored any intention of elevating this lowly concubine to the position of principal consort. Your Majesty is wise. And the second prince is wise. Qin Yu snorted lightly, the smile on his lips gradually turning cold, but I saw with my own eyes this lowly concubine strike the eldest daughter of your noble household. This, Madame Zhou, her face already swollen like a pig's head, had just scrambled to her feet when her terrified father kicked her squarely in the chest. She fell back with a wail, writhing in pain. It's all this lowly concubine's fault. She's lost her mind. I'll send her to the estate tomorrow and lock her away. I guarantee she won't cause any more trouble. Master, how can you? Madame Zhou struggled to rise, only to be kicked back down by her father. Dare utter another word, and I'll send you away this very moment. Watching this absurd spectacle, I delivered the final verdict under Lin Wan's horrified gaze, seeing how this hero is both valiant and kind-hearted. How about we marry Wan to him? Father, utterly preoccupied, nodded frantically in agreement. Precisely. Precisely. Lin Wan collapsed to the ground. Her spirit shattered. How could this be? How could this happen? It shouldn't be me. It shouldn't be me. Madame Zhou, finally unable to endure, coughed up blood and fainted. Qin Yu approached me, smiling faintly as he looked down. The eldest young miss truly put on quite a show for me. The second prince watched the spectacle for so long and even intervened. I wonder if he truly enjoys the drama. Or if, like the crown prince of the northern frontier, he seeks something from me? Truthfully, I never understood why Lin Wan, in my previous life, refused to let me go until the very end. I had already taken vows as a nun, posing no further threat to her. She had already seized everything I possessed. Yet she risked exposure to personally strangle me at the nunnery. Could it be there was still something I possessed they desired but hadn't taken? Perhaps that's why the second prince helped me. The sensational news of the esteemed second young miss of the Chang'an Marquis' household marrying a street vendor spread like wildfire throughout the capital. Some envied the peddler's good fortune, while others lamented the young lady's ill-fated lot. Yet in this world where women faced such harsh treatment, most admired the Marquis of Chang'an's decision. Even the imperial censor praised father during court, making him return home feeling ever more elated and resolute about the marriage. All of Lin Wan's antics, whether starving herself or attempting suicide by hanging, were utterly disregarded by her father. The man who had once doted on her, treating her like the apple of his eye, now only glared at her coldly, his face etched with displeasure. "If you must die," he declared, "you shall die as a member of the Zhang family." Covering her face, Lin Wan wept bitterly, finally ceasing her desperate attempts at self-destruction. After all, Consort Zhou had been banished to the estate and locked away, driven mad. No one in this household could aid her now. But I knew this was merely a facade she put on, for her true support had never been a lowly concubine within the manor, but that prince of the northern frontier, Zhou Ting, the one who seduced her, incited her, and ultimately used her to kill me. Standing beneath the eaves, I watched the maid Chuanxua sneak toward the gatehouse in the distance, raising an eyebrow. Soon enough, I'd discover what it was about me they coveted so fiercely. Moonlight shimmered on the lake's surface. My gaze remained fixed, seemingly oblivious to the footsteps growing heavier behind me. "The young miss truly has no guard up against me." A lazy voice sounded behind me, a mix of sigh and delight. I turned to meet Qin Yu's exceptionally handsome face, feeling puzzled. In my previous life, he hadn't shown the slightest concern when I drowned and was rescued. He was nowhere to be seen throughout the entire incident. This time, he'd intended only to lurk nearby and watch the spectacle. It wasn't until he heard the words "second young miss," not the first, that he became interested in everything. He saw through it all, realizing it was a scheme Zhou Ting and Lin Wan had deliberately set up for me, and that's why he took an interest. So, it was through Zhou Ting that he confirmed that thing was on me. I didn't know if he sought the same thing as Zhou Ting, but since he believed it, I could leverage his power. I guarded against everyone, but not my allies. He gave a half-smile. "Oh? So the eldest miss wishes to collaborate with me?" I curved my lips, naturally. Otherwise, why would I be meeting the second prince in the dead of night? He suddenly leaned in close, his firm nose nearly brushing mine before he halted lazily, appraising me with languid eyes. "I'd be tempted, but your highness doesn't seem nervous at all." "Of course not. Compared to the throne, such romantic entanglements wouldn't catch the second prince's eye. This humble maiden wouldn't presume to flatter herself." Qin Yu's dark pupils narrowed, then relaxed into a lazy smile. "So the young lady has come to understand her own worth?" My heart began to race. So they all wanted something from me. And this thing could actually influence the struggle for the throne. My nails dug into my palms until blood seeped out, finally calming the turmoil within. I met Qin Yu's gaze with an expression of calm detachment. "So, does the second prince wish to cooperate with me?" He leaned closer, as if seeking to shatter my composure through proximity. How does the young miss propose we collaborate? I lifted my gaze to meet his dark eyes directly. Within them, stars seemed to flicker, yet they also held bottomless black whirlpools that stirred an unsettling ache within me. And so I acted. My hand swept around Qinyu's neck, pulling him close to my ear. My lips parted softly. I can give you what you desire. But I want Zhou Ting dead. Qinyu stiffened momentarily as I drew him near, but quickly resumed his languid demeanor. Hearing this, his thin lips curved into a smile. As you wish. As I left, I didn't hear the sigh that followed behind me. Well, now I want not only those things, but you yourself. After I gave Chuanxue a way out, Lin Wan and Zhou Ting's contact grew increasingly frequent. Just as I'd expected, Zhou Ting hadn't given up on Lin Wan. She remained his pawn, not yet discarded. After all, he'd invested so much effort, and she was the closest person to me. Another month passed. One day, before dawn, a blood-soaked figure suddenly pounded on the capital's gates. The guarding soldiers were startled and about to rebuke him when the man bellowed, "The Xiongnu have attacked the city. The Prince of the North has been assassinated. The northern border is in imminent peril." From that moment, the imperial court was plunged into endless debate. Our dynasty has long favored scholars over warriors. Since General Hui Yun, the marshal of the flying cavalry, fell defending the southern frontier decades ago, only the Prince of the North and the northern border could be called a true warrior. Now the Prince of the North had been assassinated, his life hanging by a thread. Who dared face the savage Hunnic hordes in the north? Calls for peace now dominated the discourse. At that very moment, the Crown Prince of the northern frontier stepped forward, declaring his willingness to lead troops to reinforce the northern frontier army and defend the borders with his life. The emperor rejoiced. The court officials rejoiced. Everyone rejoiced. Only the house of the Lord of Grace seemed shrouded in shadow. The second prince's servant stood before me, reporting, "You say the Crown Prince of the northern frontier requested a royal marriage decree in court, claiming it would bring joy to the northern frontier prince. And the emperor agreed?" The servant nodded solemnly. I lowered my head in thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Wouldn't you know it, the wedding date just happens to be the same day as my half-sister's marriage?" The servant's eyes widened slightly, seemingly surprised by how I had guessed. No wonder I said this plot didn't exist in my previous life. After I was forced into a convent, Lin Wan married into the Prince of the Northern Frontier's household in grand style. The northern frontier remained peaceful, though the Xiongnu occasionally raided the borders. The northern frontier army had long grown accustomed to such incursions. There was never any assassination attempt that left the Prince of the northern frontier fighting for his life. The purpose of this charade, it seems, was to have me and my younger sister marry on the same day. They still wanted her to take my place. Soon, the wedding day arrived. As I sat dressing, a large group burst through the door. The door kicked open violently, and Lin Wan stood there, her eyes fixed on me with an air of superiority. The sunlight was too harsh, and I squinted. Why was my sister here instead of preparing for her own wedding? Lin Wan shed her usual coquettish demeanor and laughed unrestrainedly. Lin Ran, even if you've uncovered my scheme, what can you do? After all this, you'll still end up marrying that short, ugly street vendor. She covered her mouth. Oh, wait. That little vendor is actually quite imposing in your eyes. So this shouldn't disgrace you, right? She giggled, and the crowd she brought with her laughed along. Except for Chuanxue, a maid. They were all tall men radiating a bloodthirsty aura. The Northern Frontier Army, right? Zhou Ting really does think highly of me. I stood up and strolled leisurely toward Lin Wan. Too bad. Little sister, I'm not myself anymore. Before the words faded, I drew the jade hairpin hidden in my hand and slashed it viciously across Lin Wan's face. Blood instantly spurted out, blooming like flowers on the ground. Rather pretty. Ah! The pain on her face finally jolted Lin Wan into a shriek. She clutched her face in disbelief. Only when blood seeped through her fingers did she break down. Screaming wildly, "Kill her! Kill her!" The soldiers were stunned by the scene before them. Who would have thought the delicate young lady would be so vicious? Striking without hesitation? And with such brutal force. That long gash would surely disfigure her. The soldiers exchanged glances, momentarily unsure how to proceed. After all, though this woman would marry into the Prince of the North's household as the substitute bride for the Marquis of Chenen's eldest daughter, she was now disfigured. Disfigured, would the Crown Prince truly still want her? Doubts began to creep into their minds. Only Lin Wan remained, screaming loudly, still trying to charge at me to fight to the death. Just then, the clang of armor colliding echoed from outside the door. A slender figure appeared through the doorway, none other than the second prince. Qin Yu. Observing the scene before him, he smiled with amusement. It seems even without my intervention, the eldest daughter has found her own solution. I offered him a faint smile and hurled the jade hairpin in my hand with all my strength. That's different. After all, she's merely the most insignificant piece in this puzzle. If the eldest daughter still needs me, then that's excellent. The soldiers, who had been strutting arrogantly moments before, now stood tense as drawn bows, poised for action. But how could such a small force possibly stand against the Imperial Guards brought by the second prince? Even if we fought to the death, we'd be wiped out in no time. What should we do now? Young miss? Qin Yu stood before me, lowering his head to look at me. Her eyes, bright as stars, sparkled with amusement. I smiled back, of course. Everything must proceed as planned. The wedding sedan chair circled the city walls, swaying gently as it entered the Prince of the North's residence. A figure ahead held the red silk ribbon, guiding me step by step forward. Once upon a time, I truly had imagined this beautiful scene. This marriage had been arranged for me by my mother before she passed away. Father was overjoyed, for the Marquis of Chenen's household was gradually losing its influence, and now we had managed to climb into the Jinbei prince's household. But he never considered why the Jinbei prince would agree to this marriage. I never considered it either, knowing only to devote myself entirely to being good to Zhou Ting and to the Jinbei prince's household. He said he liked gentle women, so I never dared to speak loudly again. When he said he wanted an obedient girl, I never dared to voice dissent. I believed wholeheartedly that his kindness meant he truly loved me. I believed this marriage came about because my mother was close with the prince's consort. But I never imagined it was all a trap set by the prince himself. This trap deceived my mother. And it deceived me too. Thankfully, I died, only to be reborn. I will reclaim everything. As we bowed to the heavens and earth, preparing for the couple's vow, Zhou Ting leaned close and whispered, "Got the items?" I made no sound, only gave a slight nod. His cheerful laughter soon rang out, and he even found time to tease me. "Wanner, you're such a good girl. Once I handle things outside, I'll come back and pamper you properly." Humph. Your Wanner must be suffering terribly in that little stallholder's shabby hut right now. I feigned shyness and stepped back slightly, deliberately shifting my body away from him during the couple's vow. No one present noticed. Zhou Ting certainly didn't. He was high on the euphoria of his wedding bliss. I was led to sit upright in the bridal chamber, waiting for Zhou Ting's return. He seemed impatient, arriving back sooner than expected. "Wanner, hurry, bring me the items first." He reached to lift my veil, but I beat him to it. Oh, what might the young master be so eager to retrieve? His footsteps halted abruptly as he stared at me in utter disbelief. "Lin Ran?" I grinned widely. "It's me." Disappointed. "Your Highness? How could it be you? Where are my people? Where is Lin Wan?" I stood up and winked mischievously at him. "They're all dead. Of course. You discovered it? Your Highness. You know what? I croaked in a sinister voice. Truth is, I didn't discover anything. You all killed me. But even heaven couldn't bear to watch. So it brought me back. I'm a vengeful spirit. I'm here to collect what's owed. Zhou Ting instinctively took a step back. What nonsense are you spouting? I clicked my tongue. These days, no one believes the truth anymore. But none of that matters now. What matters is, I want your life. Hearing this, Zhou Ting burst into laughter. As if I'd told some joke. By yourself? I nodded solemnly. Yes. By myself. If I were useless, why would the esteemed Prince of Jinbei's mansion have gone to such lengths for me? You know? I sneered coldly. I might never have found out in this lifetime. All thanks to you lot. A phoenix and dragon jade pendant suddenly appeared in my hand. I snapped it forcefully in two, revealing a small note tucked inside. Under Zhou Ting's almost frenzied gaze, I slowly unfolded the paper. Only one sentence was written there. To my beloved daughter Qianqian. This jade pendant is as good as a military order. The entire Jiannan army shall obey. So it turned out my mother wasn't the daughter of the Grand Master of the Imperial Academy at all. She was the daughter of the general of the cavalry of the Jiannan army. What you ever wanted wasn't me, only this jade pendant. For it commands the Jiannan army. The most invincible force in this world. Zhou Ting suddenly lunged forward. Give it to me. His face contorted into a hideous grimace. His once handsome features utterly distorted by greedy ugliness. The next moment, as he watched the long arrow pierce his back, he finally began to come to his senses. Am I dying? I stamped my foot on his face. Yes. You are dying. Several armored soldiers burst through the door and formed a protective circle around me. They weren't the second prince's imperial guards, but my own army, the Jiannan army. In this lifetime, I had finally made contact with them. Whip this corpse and hang it at the gate of the northern frontier prince's mansion. Yes. Your Majesty. Soon, the emperor will pass away from illness, and chaos will engulf the realm. Without the Jiannan army's support and having lost his pride and joy, the northern frontier prince may not survive this tumultuous age. I watched the figure approaching me, crushing the moonlight beneath their footsteps, and smiled faintly. Second Prince, if I help you ascend the throne, what can you offer me in return? He stroked his chin, seeming somewhat conflicted. After a long pause, he said softly, 1 lifetime, 1 soul, 1 person? Extra chapter. From the perspective of Zhang Yuan, commander of the Jiannan army in a previous life. Report. I lifted my head from military affairs and looked at the young soldier before me. This is from the capital. Concerning that young miss. I grew impatient. Why didn't the general have a son? What is it? The young miss fell into the water saving her sister. A street vendor rescued her, and the Marquis of Qing'an's household forced her to marry him. She refused, choosing death instead. Holding her sister's spirit tablet, she ultimately entered a convent. What? I slammed my fist on the table. The Marquis of Qing'an's household dares to do this. But then, something occurred to me, and I reluctantly sat back down. The general didn't die in battle. He was killed by the emperor, conspiring with those treacherous ministers. To preserve the last remnant of the bloodline, the only daughter had to be entrusted to the Grand Master of the Imperial Academy, who owed his life to the general. The general was close to the Prince of Jinbei, and only the prince's household knew of this arrangement. Thus, the young lady later betrothed the young miss to the Prince of Jinbei's household. Before his death, the general issued a strict order, unless life-threatening. The connection between the Jiannan army and the young lady must never be revealed. Therefore, Even if the young miss were to marry that street vendor now, they could do nothing about it. Otherwise, should the military inspector detect any irregularities, the young lady's life would be in immediate peril. 3 months later, a sentry guarding the capital brought news. Report. General. General. The young lady is dead. What? My eyes widened in disbelief. The young lady was killed by the wife of the Prince of the North's heir. Enraged, the heir publicly beheaded his own wife. The jealousy between women is no less dangerous than the battlefield, the soldier muttered to himself. I slumped back into my chair, utterly devastated. Was it really like that? But what difference did it make if it wasn't? The pity, the real pity, was that the young lady, or the young mistress, was not a man. I swept aside the light-tracking mirror before me and, clad in the Empress's regalia, stepped toward the abyss. Sigh. Aren't you going to linger a little longer? The little imp stared at me with regret. I turned back with a faint smile. There's nothing to see here. This world favors sons over daughters. But in truth, it only matters whether a person has ability. See? As long as I grow stronger and more capable, no one dares look down on me. What does gender bias matter? What does prejudice matter? As long as I am powerful, I can shatter all barriers. Look, I've already succeeded. Dying so cowardly in that past life? Blame the world. But blame myself even more. The little ghost seemed to understand, yet also seemed not to understand. Well then, I'd better train hard. Who knows? Maybe I can even snag the title of Ghost King someday. Who says a female ghost can't be a ghost king? I grinned widely. Exactly. Who says a female ghost can't be a ghost king? Up ahead, a figure clad in white robes seemed to be waiting for something. Only when I approached did that person finally turn around. Eyes as bright as stars, yet swirling like whirlpools. A lazy voice sounded from ahead. Hey. You used me for so many years. Made me wait for you for so long. What are you going to do to make it up to me? I laughed. One life. One world. One pair of ghosts? The figure chuckled. And to my surprise, laughed along with me. The end.